Welcome to another episode of ShatterCast, where we're talking all things value with video. On this evening's episode, we're going to be talking about building your personal brand with video and attracting your ideal audience. So I think this is heavily going to lean in your way today, Alex, considering you're the marketing guy. But I think I'll give a quick spiel on my thoughts towards personal branding and branding in general. I think with the people I've spoken to over the years, there is this often a misconception of branding is a logo, or it's a color, or it's a font, or it's the standard graphics that you'd see along with it. But it is actually so much more than just a logo, just a font, just an image that you use. It's branding is everything that represents you, everything you want people to feel, the energy you put out, and the message you want people to hear. That's my view on branding. So you have to encompass it all round in everything that you do, in everything that you say, and the way you act and the way you present yourself to the outward world. It's your brand is everything about you. I mean, any differentiators on that, Alex, or any thoughts?
No, I think that's pretty good. I mean, as you say, it's oftentimes when people think of branding, they think of like, oh, well, my logo, my brand colors, my fonts, and all that stuff's good for like visual recognition. But, particularly with personal brands, particularly with the people we tend to work with, brand is much more personal. It is this thing about, well, why you and not somebody else? Because in any business, it's always like you want to avoid being just another coach, just another accountant, that's the worst place you can possibly be. And yet, most of the time, even with established business owners, that's what they get into, because we unconsciously are looking around all the other businesses and we're trying to blend in. I want to be seen like one of these companies. I want to be a company like these other companies. And of course, that's the kiss of death with marketing, is like what you want to be doing is going, how do I stand out and not look like these other companies at all? How do I put myself apart so I'm not just another? So it comes back to just business basics 101. It's like, well, why you versus your competitor? Now, oftentimes, if you are like the face of a business, the head of a business, coach, trainer, consultant, CEO, somebody who wants to raise your profile, you're kind of in luck in that, you are the only one of you. There are personality characteristics, things you bring to the table, like that differentiate you from everyone else. Just to kind of give one little exercise that I've sometimes done when working with people on their personal brand or filming, is I'll say, go out to your audience or go out to your top clients and ask them, what are the 3 words you would most associate with me when we're working together? So just poll like 8 to 10 people, your top clients, people who actually work with you, know you, like you, trust you, and see what they say. And then put them into 3 columns, because what you'll generally find is that there are very similar words for similar things. So you're looking at like, what are the 3 words that stand out the most and what resonates with me? Because then what you can do is that's your filter. Because then it's like, okay, let's say the words are, smart, confident, direct, for example, just to pick 3 words. Okay, when I'm working with somebody and I'm in the flow and they're loving it, I come across as smart, confident, and direct. Well, then that becomes your guide. Like, am I showing up in my content? Is this video, does it encompass those 3 words? Does this brand, does this marketing, is it those 3 words? Because that's a great filter to say, like, are you showing up as your best, as the people who work with you would say, oh, that's why I'm working with that person. They bring those qualities to the table. So it goes a bit beyond just like, as you say, logos and colors and like, oh, here's my brochure. It's like, what's the essence of you at your best when you're working with somebody? And it's a great thing to kind of capture in video. So when people are asking, and the reason we chose the title, build your personal brand with video and attract your ideal audience, those are 2 halves of the same coin, right? If you embody your personal brand, if you showcase it, you'll attract your ideal clients because they're yours, not somebody who's going to have like a 40-minute phone call and then go to your competitor because they're shopping around. They'll be like, I found the person for me. I found the person I want to work with, not just because they bring the skills, but because they bring the values, they bring the energy, they bring the vision that I vibe with. And so just on like the highest level possible, I'd say like that's kind of what we're talking about with personal brand. And so I think kind of what we can discuss from a sales and a video perspective is like, how do you capture that? Because we've all got different tricks we use for like helping somebody to capture and hone their brand, and why it's so important from a marketing and sales perspective. So, I mean, I've got more to say, but does that kind of help to frame the discussion?
Yeah, I think there's a bit to add on to that as well. If you're going to do that little exercise, something that you actually did with us, and now we do with clients as well, is it's once you've gone out and you've asked people what you represent and got those words, and you're starting to see a pattern forming. Um, as a second part to that, what could be really good actually is think of yourself. Think of yourself in 12 months' time, 3 months' time. What do you then want to be known for? Give it some proper thought, and then see if that answer aligns with the answers that you were given by what people are already aligning you with. And then if it doesn't, then you know there's a mismatch in the brand you want to be compared to the brand you are. Because that's the thing I've noticed with clients as well, is a lot of the time the brand is that surface level. They don't actually understand their brand a lot deeper than that, which means when it comes to video especially, then they struggle to get their messaging across. They struggle to know what their messaging is, what their core values are, to try and communicate and articulate that out. And it becomes a real struggle when it comes to especially the ideas phase of what content am I looking to create, where do I want it to go, what's the purpose going to be of it. And I think, well, also when you're looking to develop a brand and what you want to be known for, authenticity is also key. It can't be a fake version of you mapped off somebody else that you idolize. It has to be you. Because the worst thing, I mean, I've said this for years. I remember one of my first sort of mentors told me this, is when you're building a personal brand, the worst thing you can have happen to you when you meet someone for the first time is them turn around to you and say, "Oh, you're not like you are online." It sounds like a harmless comment, but actually it shows that there's a massive gap between how you're portraying yourself and how you actually are. So how you turn up should be how you turn up everywhere across the board. Otherwise, you do get a mismatch. It gives an odd feeling. It can spur uncertainty. Why are you turning up this way over here, but this way over here? I think it's a throwback to how people used to view socials. So Facebook is more, you know, informal and family orientated, and to a degree, very very true. LinkedIn's more professional, but rather what people used to do is, rather than um, still have a sort of unified message across the platforms, it was they would turn up on LinkedIn very different. Suddenly they go from their hoodie to a suit and a tie and talk in a very different way and articulate in a very different way. But then when you had people follow you across multiple platforms, they're like, okay, which one's the real you? And if people are questioning that, then you're already falling in a bit of a hole. And I don't know, have you had experience with that one, Nath, when you jumped on calls with people?
Yeah, all the time. Definitely. I think that's a really good point. I think another good point that you made right at the very beginning is how you make them feel. Sales is very emotional. It's emotive. Like, people buy things because they either want it, they want to move towards something they want, or move away from something they don't want. Those are the two real options within a sales environment. And I think it's one that, from a personal brand point of view, is very much overlooked and underestimated. How do you want your brand to make someone feel? When you take a look at Steve Jobs and Apple, people buy Apple products not necessarily because it's the best phone on the market or because it does something that no other phone does. It's because of how it makes them feel. And that is empowering, especially from a sales point of view, because 9 times out of 10, the battle is won by how you're making them feel. And that can be from as simple as the brand in itself and what your brand represents. Um, or how you're making them feel throughout the journey with you. So from a video perspective, when they're watching your videos, how does that make them feel? Does it make them feel empowered? Does it make them feel energized? Whatever your product is designed to do, if you emphasize and you lean into that, it will help with the sales process.
I think the first question we've got is, what type of video content is most effective for building a personal brand? And I mean, I use I use an example all the time when I first start talking to people. Most of the people I talk to are in the coaching space, so they kind of know these two people. But the comparisons I use is a Gary Vee versus a Tony Robbins. Both very, very established people, both very, very successful people, very different strategies when it comes to video content, from what I can tell. But also it gives off, again, it comes back to the feel. It gives off a very different feel to if you were to be approached by these people. And like I say, they're both very successful. So I don't think there's a wrong or right, but I think that it depends on how you want to make people feel. So for me, I kind of go, if you walk down the street and you had Gary Vee on one side of the road and you had Tony Robbins on the other side of the road, who do you feel you could approach, and who would you feel intimidated by? Personally, I'd feel more intimidated by Tony Robbins, not just because he's a huge dude, but because if you look at his content, everything is very high production value. It's shiny, it's polished, it's elite. And if you look at his clientele, same thing. Very high up people, very powerful people already, and that is his market. So that's who he's aiming at. So him, even when he brings people on who are not within that realm, generally it's not him that does the coaching and the teaching. At that point, he hands it down to the coaches on his team, and his team handle that. But if you see Gary Vee and his content, yes, he has some shiny, high production value stuff, but actually he's also not afraid to just flick his camera on in his phone, turn his camera on, start talking. And having that personal interaction, that rougher, that rawer feel, helps him connect with his audience. It makes him a lot more personable. It makes him a lot more relatable. It does just make it a lot more real when it comes to that. Alex, I know you've run a lot of YouTube channels. You've helped people build their channels and their personal brands. What's your experience been with it?
Yeah, well, I think there's a point in everyone's YouTube channel where they start to come out more from behind the professional aspect, as you said before. Like, quite often when people first go on camera, they feel like, oh, I've got to show up as the professional. I've got to put the best face on. I've got to say everything, use the jargon. And so generally when people first start producing content, it's much more formulaic, much more stilted. And then gradually, if people can sort of put their own personality into it, like, for example, put their hobbies, their sayings, like if they have aspects of their personality, putting that into the videos, like where you film the videos, what you're wearing, all that kind of stuff, like making it more you. And generally, like, you can tell when somebody's really kind of clicking on content because they show up much more uniquely. And it's like, oh, as you said, what often happens is if you vibe with that person, you then want to consume more of their content. You want to spend more time with them. I don't know, like, you can tell this when you do just YouTube searches anyway. If you find a video, or if you do a search, generally if you watch a couple of videos, if you like the person, you generally want to watch more. Or if you see them show up on your suggested tab, you'll be like, oh, it's that person again. I like it. And it could be something that you're interested in, but generally it's more like, oh, I kind of like that person's style. I like the way they present things. I like the way they, and of course it's a huge world when people say, oh, how can I compete with these people? It's like, actually, what you bring to the table, there are people there for. Like, there are some big names that I can't watch their content. Like, everyone says, oh, you got to watch so and so because they have amazing content. And I'm like, I can't stand to watch more than 5 seconds of them because they annoy me. But like, that just shows what a big world it is, right? It's like, you can get people who are making millions of dollars and their channels are huge, and I can't stand them. But there are people that I like, that I buy from, who kind of have smaller, more niche channels. But it's all about, if you go to somebody's channel, does it feel like, I found my home, I found my people, I found my place? And that's what personal brand is all about. Now, one thing you can do when it comes to brand as an exercise, and this is more kind of copy, but it goes along to video as well, is if you look at somebody's website, but you take off all of their colors and logos and brand, and you just look at the actual content, could you tell who that person is? Does it look different to the competitors? And what most people discover is they say, oh, I'm using the same bland language as everyone else is. It's only when I slap on some colors and designs that it's actually different. And it's the same with the videos. Like, if you take away all of the whiz bang editing and stuff, like, is there uniqueness? Like, some of my favorite YouTubers, you can tell when they come up because the way they open the video, they've got a unique little like saying or a hook. They've got little phrases they'll use that nobody else does. They'll reference people. They'll reference their hobbies, their family. Like, you never see them, but if you spend a bit of time with them, you're like, oh, I know this person. Like, I know kind of how they're going to react in the situation. And that means you then feel connected to them. So, like, Nathan, I don't know if you've had sales calls, like I've had this, like in emails and stuff, where you tell a story or something and you forget about it. And then somebody gets to a call or they meet you and they go, oh, I also, like, played golf on that course. I also did. And it's like, you go, what are you talking about? Oh, yeah. Because they took this bit of information in, this weird nugget of information.
Because it related to them. Well, I had it today on the call, actually. And the other thing, the beauty of what you've just said as well, is that most people look at it and go, actually, I don't want to turn people away. But from a sales point of view, from my point of view, actually turning people away that aren't your ideal viewer, that actually would never buy from you, is a great thing, because it saves time, it saves energy, and it means that you're not going to be pitching a product to somebody that you're just not vibing with. Even if you could solve their problem, if you don't relate to that person, it comes back to what we were saying at the beginning about how you make them feel. If you kind of turn somebody off at that point, then great. You're not my ideal viewer, you're not my ideal client. Move on to somebody that is. Spend your time with people that want to be helped and want to learn or discover what it is that you're offering.
There's a couple of things in there as well which I thought were really cool. You mentioned about how you can drop little things in to help add to your brand. Like I say, brand is everything. So an obvious one for me is red. Big fan of red, if you couldn't tell. And I think, to be honest, that dates back right to the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Red was always my favourite. Even when green came along, when he turned white, red was still my favourite. So obviously my branding had to be in and around that light and everything. But you can use it in a very subconscious way. So a lot of the stuff I do includes some sort of red somewhere. It might not always be the primary thing. It might not always be as overpowering as this is, say, but it's subconscious. As small as having this big light on in the background. Now, what I actually also have is a small light down here, because this one in the daytime you can't see, but just a little hint of red down here. It's subconscious, and it's just planting those sort of seeds. And so when people see red in a nice way, hopefully it brings subconscious things back to me. And one of the things I like to say with people is, especially when they're exploring personal brands, and again making it personal to them and their personality, is if we use a backdrop which is, say, somewhere in their house and they've got some shelves behind them, and they're like, oh, we need to tidy these up, and usually they're full of magazines or books, the first thing I'll say is, like, what's your hobbies? What are you into? Have you got any little trinkets? Are you a fan of Warhammer or Star Wars or something that you can have little models in the background? Plant little seeds of your personality, because you never know who's going to connect. Like you say with the golf course, you never know who's going to connect with the different aspects. And then you'll have the weirdest conversations when you actually call people and go, oh, I saw that in the back of your video. I'm a big fan of that as well. What do you think of it? Great icebreakers. Great way to get into a conversation. And you've already got, the whole thing is gain common ground. Gain some common ground, and you're already bought in. They've already got that emotional favour with you. And it makes jobs like Nath's a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's about being personal, and actually part and parcel of a sales person's role is to listen. And then it's not a case of mirroring or repeating back, but listening and building commonalities, building things that you've both got interests in, or you've both got experiences of, and building a relationship. It's not, and that's exactly the same thing. Even if it's something like a trinket, like you just said, Joe, it's something that you've got in common that will relate to them, even on a subconscious level, so that when you are having a call with somebody, or you're interacting, even on YouTube, subconsciously they're taking that in, and when you're having a conversation with them, or whatever that next logical step is, they feel more related to you because of something as simple as a trinket.
Well, you can put, there's so many ways to put personality in. See, this is often the layer that a lot of people miss out when they do video. What they'll do is they'll think about, okay, what am I talking about? What's the title? Then they'll think about some stuff to talk about. And then that'll kind of be it. And they'll be like, okay, I'll show up and do that. And then, but what they miss out is that extra step where it's like, and how are you going to make it fun, interesting, entertaining, unique? So like some of the projects I've done in the past, like, you know, with things like fitness coaches, business coaches, we'll do something where we'll be like, okay, how do we make this video or this ad or whatever we're doing different, eye-catching, unique? So like, for example, we did with one client, we were doing something about, you know, financial services, but we filmed it in black and white and put on like sad French music, and we made it like some existential drama, like a weird little sketch. And the content was just like what you'd normally say, but suddenly like people are commenting, people are tagging, people are sharing, because it stands out. It's different. It's not just somebody just saying stuff. It's like, how do you put that little bit of difference in, that little extra thing? And even as you know, Jill, with B-roll, Like you can use B-roll footage. It's like, and when you're talking about hobbies, like if you like, if you sort of like collect something like, I don't know, single malt whiskey or coffee or something, you can make that part of your video. Hey, so today I'm trying this blend. Now let me tell you a bit about X. So it's just like you can kind of blend things together into one video. Or like, hey, I'm just going to walk out. I did something with another business coach, and they were talking about like how to turn around. They worked with restaurants and bars, so they'd like go and help people get more footfall and stuff. And we were talking about it, and then I was like, well, hang on, like in your, this was in the States, in your area, are there clients you have? Could you do like a mini documentary of you like driving to see a client, you talking to the client, you basically doing like one of these almost shows of like bar rescue. Let's do these 3 things. Let's come back in 30 days and see what we've done. Now, a little bit more effort than simply just like clicking on your phone and going, here's 3 top tips. But like that resonated so much more. And it didn't take a lot to do because they were just filming what they were doing anyway. But suddenly you've got personality, you've got story, you've got a hook, and you get to see the person like doing the thing they're good at. And then if you're looking for somebody to work with, you're like, well, I want to work with that person because I've already seen, and it's something we say to people as well, like, don't be afraid to like give your best stuff away for free on YouTube. Because believe it or not, people will still pay for it. Like Tony Robbins, you could basically have a Tony Robbins seminar for free on YouTube, but people are still going to pay like 20 grand a pop for a ticket because like, well, actually, I want him to do it. So it's like, just because you give stuff away or you're generous with information, that actually pays back more to you, because people are then like, oh, I know this person's good. I want to actually experience the live thing. I want to actually experience the person's program. So I never feel like, oh, I can't give away my best stuff. I've got to like hide all the good stuff away and just talk a load of, blah, blah, blah jargon. No, give your best stuff away. Show how amazing you are. And believe it or not, people are actually going to want to pay for it, because then they're going to go, I want more of what I've just had.
Don't look at those who are doing it really well and assume you've got to be like that straight away. It's this whole myth of perfection. Don't think you're going to be amazing from the off. Everybody starts somewhere, and it's easy to go, it's really easy for those guys. But I guarantee if you go back and look at their first videos, they were horrible. They were just as horrible as everybody else's, just as horrible as mine, and they're as horrible as your first videos will be. You look at any video content creator, guru, whatever they are, they'll always say your first videos will always be your worst. It's because you've got to grow through the process. And part of that is understanding that personal brand, because you're not going to nail the personal brand straight away. Because if the personal brand is your personality and you've never sat there and dived deeper into your personality, it's something you become aware of over time. You learn your quirks.
Everyone wants to be Alex Hormozi, don't they? Hormozi style content. And you go back and you go, well, how did he blow up? Like, well, if you actually look back at his videos, he did so many videos, like multiple per day, just a huge torrent of content. And he was like bad for a lot of it. Like he only developed his style because, like, if you go back to his early stuff, he was just recording stuff on the fly. I'll record this phone call, I'll record this training. And it was after time. But then also, if you look at him, like his target is like the ultra rich, because he invests in businesses, and he's got like that huge jacked body and the muscle vest and the whatever he puts on his nose. But that's deliberate. That's like a deliberate, I don't want to look like a business coach. I want to look like a weirdo in my thumbnail. But all of this stuff, like it's like, and now everyone goes, oh, I want to be unique like Hormozi, so I'm going to do the same content Hormozi does, and then I'll be unique. It's like, no, commit to actually just doing content, find your style. Don't be afraid to be unique, weird, wonderful, amazing. And that's the real secret of someone like Hormozi. Like, he was asked, how do you do content so well? And his answer was, I do a lot of it. Like, there's no magic trick. I just do a lot of it. And guess what? If you do 1,000 videos, you'll learn something.
It's the same as everything, though, isn't it? If the key with anything, if you want to be successful in it, is consistency and repetition. Nobody wakes up and goes, right, I'm going to be a salesperson and I'm going to be the best salesperson there is. You have to repetitively have that drive and ambition to keep picking up the phone and keep knocking on doors and doing the same thing over and over again. And the key to life is learning from mistakes that you make. As long as you're learning, you're developing. And that, for me, is the same across, whether that's video, whether that's whatever it is that you're doing in life. Because ultimately, the more that you do, the more consistent you are, the more reps that you do. You don't go to the gym and go, right, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to be fit. No, you have to keep going to the gym. You have to keep showing up. You have to keep putting in the work. and you will naturally get better over time. It doesn't just wake up one morning and go, I'm going to be Alex or Mosey. It doesn't work that way. That's not how life works, unfortunately.
I was going to say, it's literally like, it's getting the reps in, and your brain is a muscle, and you've got to work it out like any other muscle in the body. You've got to practice it to become good at articulating content on the spot. It's a case of practice, practice, practice. Accept yourself for who you are, because there's a lot of people who won't do content because they go, my voice sounds like this, or I look like this, or I've got a spot over here, or what. Embrace your flaws. Embrace everything about you. I had a client the other week who is usually a very bubbly person, a very big personality, like very funny, very out there. And then the second the camera turned on, very flat, very stone faced. And we did a little bit of work on like loosening him up and getting him out, because again, his content was all about him. Me, I embrace the fact that I'm tiny. I'll be the first to make a joke about how small I am, and that becomes part of kind of what I'm known for, the little red guy who goes around in his nice red jacket and hoodie. And it's like, it becomes part of my personal brand. And that's what I mean. I could easily, I'm insecure because I'm 5'2", nearly 5'3", pushing, but embrace it, just have a bit of fun with it. And that's the best thing you can do, is just enjoy the journey of it. And I think that's one of the pieces of feedback that I often get, which probably I should talk about more, is there is often a lot of build up and a lot of worry to those who it's their first time going on a shoot, and you have this perception of this fear of camera that they have. And what we actually find, the fear is all based around the suspense and the build up. It's not actually about being on the camera, because when they're on the camera, it's fine, and we work through it, and we laugh about it, and we have fun, and we joke, and then afterwards they kind of say, well, it was a bit of an experience. I secretly kind of enjoyed it. And like, that for me is magic, because then that means they're going to do it again, and they're going to keep at it.
That shows the value of like what we do, like to tie it back, because like if people are going, oh, I want content, but I have one of these issues, or like I don't know my personal brand, or I don't know what I would say, or I don't know this. That's kind of why you should sort of work with people like us who kind of do this, because you can hurdle a lot of these things. Because like when you don't have to think so much about, well, what am I going to say, and you have somebody to bounce these ideas off, and like we help people create content strategies, we help people create content plans and bullet scripts and stuff. So it's like, a lot of the stuff that people traditionally worry about or that stops them creating content, we help take them over that hurdle. So then the only thing you kind of got to do is just kind of show up, and we can coach you through that. And then you get all this content you can put out there. Because what stops people is like, well, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Life keeps getting in the way. I'm not consistent. I don't feel confident or comfortable being on camera. Great. So work with people like us who can come up with a content strategy, who can coach you and give you energy on the day to turn up and be your best, and then can actually take the content and actually do stuff with it. And it's always in the calendar, and it's always there. So when people go, so many people we know who've like started channels, their big thing is always like, I wish I'd started this sooner. I wish I'd started my channel back when I originally had the idea and put a little post-it note in my Asana or Trello, and not when I actually got around to it months later, because in those extra months, I could have got so much more traction. So it's like, when you don't have to worry about, oh, what am I talking about, and who's going to do this, and what do I do, and when all of that's off your plate, the only thing you've got to do is show up as yourself, and that helps with your personal brand, because then all you got to do is be yourself and kind of let the rest of the process happen by itself. So I think that's kind of like one of the main benefits that we can give to clients, is we can kind of take a lot of that worry off, and then all you got to do is kind of be yourself. And it's easier to do that when you have a team or you have people around you, because people who try and create content like just on their own at their computer or in a camera, or it's often great, but it's often lacking that spark that you get when you're with somebody else. They're bringing the energy, they're coaching, they're asking you questions, because then that taps into you, particularly for coaches or trainers. Like they tend to light up when they're coaching or training. So if there's somebody there with you bouncing ideas around or reflecting back, you're thinking, oh, and why is that? And what makes that happen? And what would you say to somebody who X? It taps into your brain, and suddenly you're the coach. And that's what people want to see. They want to see you being the coach. They don't want to see you being the presenter. 20 reasons why coaching is amazing. No, they want to see you coach. And if you have somebody there helping you and coaching you through the process, you can show up as that person. And that's part of, I know particularly Joe, when you're on shoots, that's part of the magic of what you bring to people, is helping them access how they are at their best. Like with that client you were talking about. And that makes all the difference.
Also, where they hold the value, because people don't see the value they've got a lot of the time, and it's almost selfish to not share it. So I make a point of trying to make sure we get all the value out as possible, and it's never too late to start. And to sum it up a bit, I think personal branding is, without trying to sound too woo-woo, it's a bit of a self-development journey. Is you have to go on and you have to do some painful stuff to actually realize what you're about, what your message is, what you feel, and what you make other people feel, and what you want to make other people feel, probably more importantly. So with that being said, I think we'll call it a night there. And I think if anybody has any topics that you'd like us to cover, anything you'd like us to talk about in terms of video marketing and sales, then please do either leave a comment or drop any of us a message. We're more than happily take it on. If you want to drop us comments during, we'll also take questions during that. Other than that, this has been ShatterCast again, and we will see you next week.
Bye for now.
See you guys.